Hey, all you rad dads out there.
Okay, so let's get started. Let's officially welcome you to the Rad Dad Show. First question, who are you? Who are we talking to here?
Oh, my name is Bryan Ray Turcotte. I don't know if you know what I do. I do all kinds of stuff, so it's kind of hard because sometimes people know me in different lights, you know. It's like I've kind of been in and around the punk scene since I was 14. Grew up in San Jose and moved to LA when I was 19. You know, played in bands in San Jose when I was a kid, opening up for every band you can imagine in the 80s. And then in LA, started a band and got signed and worked at Splash Records, and then kind of launched a book company in '99. And my first release was this book called Fucked Up and Photocopied, and that kind of launched me into the publishing business. And I guess long and short of it is that I just kind of do all that stuff. Like I'm still a musician. I run a recording studio. I still publish books. I'm an artist. I've recently become a curator and creative director at the Punk Rock Museum. So, I mean, it's kind of like I got my hands in a lot of pies, but it's always kind of rooted in the I'm my own boss. I don't really ask permission to do stuff DIY kind of arena. I've owned art galleries and run record labels, and but it's all independent stuff. So it's like most of the time when I tell people what I do, they're kind of like, dude, how is that even possible to do all those things? And it's like, I just kind of find the time. I guess it's when it's something that you love and it's something that I just do, like breathing or eating or sleeping. It's not a job, it's not hard, but it does consume a lot of my time. And then on top of that, I'm a dad to two teenagers who I love dearly, and I've changed my entire life around that idea. When they were born, a lot of things changed. Like I don't travel and do all the things that I used to do before that. I mean, I still travel, but not like I used to. So a lot of these things were centered around them also. Like I don't know what you even know about me or what sounds schizophrenic or
But
crazy.
all of those things is, the reason that you're here is that you have all
Yeah,
of these
yeah.
things going on. And so, uh, yeah, how I would maybe describe you from what I've seen, and I've only really seen from Instagram, and I don't know how I stumbled across your account maybe a couple of years ago. It was probably something that you posted and me searching hashtags, and I would, my description would be a punk archivist of sorts, and
Sure.
and yeah, that's all like stuff that I love too. I'm a huge SNFU fan, and have one, I would argue, one of the biggest SNFU record collections in the world. and I
Nice,
and
nice.
and I've created this community, and people ask me questions about different pressings and all that, and I just nerd out, with that. So that's probably where, or maybe that, I don't know, maybe it's through Brian, ancient artifacts,
Oh, sure, yeah, Brian Gorsinger, yeah.
yeah. So maybe it
I
was
mean,
from that.
there's definitely a small group of us around the world that uh collects, but in a way that I would argue is not from a collector perspective. Like I am a historian, an archivist, a curator. I've shown and exhibited all around the world. Like I don't think of myself as like a buyer of things or a collector of things. But the collection is huge and massive. And I can only attribute that to the fact that I've been in it since I was 15, so I've never really stopped. That's what led me to Fucked Up and Photocopied, was that I had a pretty big collection to start with. My partner who did the book with me at the time, Chris Miller, was a Boston punk, so he had his personal collection. So that's what kind of kicked it off. Then once we started making calls, it was actually kind of easy for us because we worked at Slash at the time. So it was like, hey, Ian Mackay, like I work at Slash, I'm doing a book. And they were like immediately like, oh, okay. He's got some credential. He's going to give me a FedEx number. You know, like I trust this guy, or I got your number from, you know, Joe Shithead from DOA. You know, that kind of same idea of go book your own tour. I was just calling people based on getting numbers from other people. And then after about 6 months of collecting for the book, like we had no publisher or anything like, you know, in mind. Ended up with, you know, 200,000 or 300,000 pieces from maybe 200 different contributors. So it certainly gave us a lot to work with when designing the book. But then to my happiness and surprise, only about half of them wanted their stuff back. Actually, some of the people, I still have some of their collections being held because they don't even know how to get a hold of them, you know. But ultimately, the collection kind of exploded beyond the book, and then once the book came out, it exploded yet again, because then all the people that I didn't know existed were calling me saying, "Oh my God, why didn't you call me? I didn't know you. You know, we're going to do another one." And so that's what led to Punk is Dead, Punk is Everything. So the collecting just kind of has always ramped up every year or every few years based on like product output, gallery shows, books, that kind of stuff, which is fun. And then I think also because I'm not a buyer and seller, there's a lot of people who have entrusted their collections with me, because I just don't sell stuff. It's just more about like showing and telling stories and exhibiting. So I think I've gotten access to a lot of things that I wouldn't normally have, because they know that it's just safe in the collection. And if they ever did want it back, it's right here, like in order. So somehow it's become almost like a, I don't know what you call it, like the patron saint of punk rock. Like I feel like
Yeah.
it's my job, you know, to kind of protect the stuff, show the stuff, tell the story, uncover things, you know. It's something I love doing. I learn every single day that I do it. You know, like I've been in the game a long time, and I still am coming across things that I'm like, I have no idea what this is, and you know, and I'm learning more and telling more stories. So it never gets boring for me, because it's constantly turning over rocks and going, oh my God, what is this? You know, tell me about this. I didn't know this existed. I mean, just recently I found, I'm a huge Darby Crash fan and a huge Germs fan, and working at Slash allowed me to see lots of things, and being in LA, all that. But I find stuff. I found a Germs flyer um, from Scranny, the singer of Wasted Youth, that I'd never seen in my entire life, and I've even shown it to a dozen people, and they've never seen it. So it's like the idea that there's still, you know, King Tut's tombs to find, and to help tell the story. It's never ending. Like I feel like I could never do it even in my lifetime and complete it. So that gives me, you know, joy to kind of keep going and just to keep finding stuff. But I don't have that collector's state of mind that I have to have stuff, or that I have to own things or covet things. It's just not in my nature. Like if you come to my studio, you'll see piles of flyers, and all the t-shirts are out. Like people look through them. It's not like behind glass or in plastic or any of that junk.
Sweet. That's rad. We can talk more as we go through that. Here's your first question. Do you consider yourself a rad dad?
Man, that's a hard question.
That's why we ask it.
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, I you know, I I toggle back and forth between that question a lot. It's like, I don't know. I guess I can put it this way. Like my dad was super cool, probably one of the coolest people that I've ever known in my life. Probably was thought to be cool by everyone around him, but was a horrible dad. So I looked up to him from like a hero point of view, but it was not a great experience from a comfort, safety point of view. And then my grandfather was like one of the best dads that I could imagine, but was a square by all intents and purposes, like an amazing person, but had no interest in being cool or trying to flaunt anything or, flex his power. So it's like I think that I think that I really strive to be not a cool dad, and I kind of inherent that term rad into that, uh, and just be a normal square dad. But I think no matter how you look at it, if you look at what I do in my life, I think my kids might think it's rad, you know? So it's tough. Like I think I'm a decent person and have a lot to say and supportive and creative and emotional and helpful and all that kind of stuff that I love to do. Want to live my truth and empower people, and I love being in a band more than I love being a solo artist. I like working in groups and being inspired and all that kind of stuff. But I really try to just be super dependable and even and not push my culture or my creative ideas on the kids too much. But shit, that being said, it's like my youngest is in 3 different punk rock bands, and I've taken him to see Rancid when he was 9 years old because I grew up with Lars, and like I've done a lot of that stuff, which maybe in hindsight, maybe when they're older, might look back and go, "Holy crap, that was rad!" But at the time, it was very normal. Um, always try to be not too aggressive in like the art culture or the punk rock culture because I don't know. I guess with the music, I never wanted to push music on them, but I left guitars around the house all the time. So one of them really gravitated towards it, and he's an amazing musician, better than I ever was at his age. And he's in all these bands and doing all this stuff, and he's a born artist, but has nothing to do with me, even though he might disagree with that. So that's why that's a hard question. Like I don't know how to answer it. Like they would have to answer it. I think I'm a good dad, but and I definitely have tried to teach them to live your truth and to, as long as I'm happy in my life, I think it will cross over into their lives. Like I'm not doing something I don't like. I'm not complaining about my life or my job. Like I'm just trying to say like this makes me happy, playing in a band or going and doing books or meeting with different types of people so that they can just see that I'm happy doing what I'm doing, and that's what I hope that they glean. Um, but I really wait for them to start the questions of like music and culture and art and that type of stuff, to say like, sure, okay, we can have that conversation. I really try to not influence their personalities by my own likes or desires and that kind of things. Like I'm like, if you want to be a doctor, you should be a doctor. Like I don't want you to be a musician or an artist just because I am. I don't expect you to like punk rock or the punk rock museum or to go see my band or any of that kind of stuff. Like if you want to, totally cool, but I'm not trying to make little Bryans, if that makes sense.
Totally. That's you touched on a lot of different kind of things there. Like, and that's one of the, I think, missions, if that's how I can describe it, of Rad Dads and the Rad Dad show too, is like you kind of touched on the idea of like you kind of doing you and following your passions, but then not being overbearing on your kids. But also, I think they see that, right? It's really kind of like a modeling idea. Like I'm the kind of the same way. I like punk rock, skateboarding. I love going to live music. I play in a Bad Religion tribute band, and my son sings Nervous Breakdown with us. But if I look at his iPod, it's not really punk rock, but I get I have some fortunate, opportunities with some of the friends, here. And for example, Propaganda is really big, favorite band of
Yeah.
mine. And my friend's a promoter and also their tour manager for the Western Canada. So whenever they're here, we get to go and see him sound check. And like I bring my son,
Yeah.
and he knows, the guys from the band now, and like,
Yeah.
but that's just like normal, like you said. Like
Yeah.
I'll be honest, I don't really care if he likes Propaganda, but I'm gonna go see Propaganda sound check.
Yeah.
You're with me, you're coming along.
Yeah.
Maybe a
Sure.
bit begrudgingly, but when you're older and can say no, I'll be okay with that. I'm not
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's, it's funny how that stuff comes around too. It's like I always try to create a space where they can like or dislike a thing and have the ability to say it without feeling judged, because it's not something that I really pushed any kind of agenda of what I think is cool or who, for me it's more simple. It's like good person, bad person, right and wrong, like that kind of stuff. But years later, it's funny to me, like my son was like, "Oh my God, I know this song." I'm like, "Yeah, you do. I played this song in the car a million times, but it wasn't for you. It was just me listening to it." And he's like, "Yeah, the Cramps. Like I didn't realize." And I'm like, "Yeah, I mean, because it wasn't like I was trying to educate you of like this is what you should think is cool. It was just music we played. You guys responded to it and you liked it, so we played it. But it wasn't about what it represented or who it was or its place in the world." And it hit him years later. So, I mean, I guess that's the only way I can kind of describe it is like I think that my wife and I are definitely like just huge believers of living your truth and being as honest and open about your feelings as possible, without trying to sway anybody, and just accept all things, like all four of us like different foods and different music and all that stuff. And that's rad. Like I just would, I know that my father was really trying to put a lot of him onto me, and it never really felt great to me, even though I loved him and worshiped him on a lot of levels. Like I didn't want to be like him, and it was always felt like, um, if I disagreed with something, that it was me letting him down, and I just never wanted to ever make any of my kids feel that way. It's like, just because I play music doesn't mean you need to play music. I'm not going to force you to take piano lessons. I'm not going to, tell you what to be in life. It's just kind of trying to help them make the best decisions for themselves and then own those decisions, and then deal with, oh, you didn't really pick the right soccer team, but we committed to them. We're going to stick with it until it's okay to not, like it's not going to bail you out of stuff, and I'm not going to force you into something.
Mm.
So like, I don't know, man. I think I'm a good dad in that way, but I mean, I also know that it can't help but rub off that like he's surrounded by crazy free thinking artists. And like my youngest is hanging around Fat Mike and Fletcher when he's 8 years old, and they're no holds bar telling stories, and I'm just like, let it rip, like that's Fletcher. Like I'm not gonna tell him not to, but like, and so I think that as they giving them the sort of safety net to kind of like take it on, have feelings about it, decipher it how they want, and then when they need explanation or understanding, certainly I want to be there to help them, but I don't want them to ever feel like they're having to adopt a feeling about anything just because it's my feeling. I think that's important.
And does that idea stem from punk rock, or is it the fact that how
I
you
think
felt with your
so.
dad, or is like,
No, I think so. I think it does. I mean, I know how I felt around. Look, my dad left when I was 9, and it was up and down and hit and miss up until uh, the day he died, which is a few years ago. But I think that I always knew how I felt, and it was tough because it was I always worshipped him. I never looked at anybody in the world like a hero figure or somebody that I wanted approval from like him. But at the same time, he did things that made me feel bad, and I might have not even known why. But I think that once I kind of found punk rock and found that group of people who clearly were supporting the idea of, be yourself, and it's accepted, like it's not about a uniform or behaving in a certain way, that then I kind of realized really what was happening previous to that. It's kind of like, oh wow, like, yeah, this means something to me, and so it allowed me to kind of change my outlook on things as well as my behavior on things. So I think punk rock was definitely a way of establishing that there's something beautiful about just being yourself regardless of how people think, and that you have to live your truth, and you can't live for other people, and you can't just seek other people's approval, um and live that way, and that's what I was doing with my father, was just trying to please him, even though I knew I wasn't like him. I was too emotional, sensitive, concerned about what people thought, you know, had a hard time with doing the wrong thing for self gain. And that was what he was all about. So it was challenging.
In what ways his
So I was
father?
always hyper aware, like especially when I had kids. It's like, oh, now here's a point where I can actually really put this to the test. I mean, I think I had been able to do that in my relationship with my wife and my friends and my crew and all that. But then once we had kids, it's like, oh, now it's on. Like I made a promise, like I will never make my kid feel guilty because they want to do something that I might not want to do, or they want me to, you know, take them to a party at midnight or pick them up, or, it's like, it's never going to be about like, oh, dude, it's just like, you got it. I'll be right there. You just suck it up, man. You're the dad. It's not a friendship thing, this is like, I'm the dad. Like, that's not my job, is to flex my personal bullshit on them, So it's really got a lot of that from my grandfather. It's just like he never ever did that to me ever, no matter how crazy it was. And so I've tried really hard with my kids to always be that way, to just be, I mean, certainly, as like kids are going to pick up when you're disappointed. But I mean, again, it's just not about guilt or just like selfishness or, and you have to, just like you were just saying, like you might want to go do a thing and it's just not the right time or place, and to never make them feel bad about like they have to go to the bathroom or they just don't want to go to a book fair. It's like, no problem, man, we're out of here. It's never about me being disappointed in them because they don't want to do what I do as an adult. So I've really tried hard to, I think I'm I think I've done a decent job at that. Just being like, no problem. I'm not gonna yell, get mad, make them feel bad. Like there's no point in that. Like this is all they need is love and security and understanding and safety and support, And if they want my opinion as a person, then I'll give it to them, but only if it's suggested or asked for, or unless I think they're in danger or making a mistake. I'll tell them my opinion, but I'm not trying to make them be humans that I want them to be.
Right. And so in what ways has fatherhood changed you? You said there was a kind of that shift, okay, it's on, but
I think it's changed me for the better, for sure. I mean, I'm not a different person, but I think I don't know, I think it's definitely made me a better listener or a better friend, or just, like less, um, what's interesting is I never, I never expected that when the kids were born, this is going to sound weird, but I never expected when the kids were born to feel like I was just introduced to a person that's fully formed, if that makes sense. Like when I met them for the first time when they were born, it was like, oh, whoa, like this is a fully formed, full personality, like person, soul in this body, and the only thing that they can't do is like speak to me or walk around or feed themselves. Like I didn't expect that. I expected it to be a little more like, oh, you can just plug information and they just kind of evolve. You know what I mean? Like that just wasn't something that I had thought about, even though I believe in all that stuff. Like I didn't know I was gonna feel that way where it's like, oh shit, hey man, like I look at my kids both now 15 and 17, and it's like they're exactly the same people I met those years ago. They just developed a sense of communication and developed their sense of understanding of things, but who they are as people, what they stand for, the way they operate, the look, the feeling, the emotion, the intuitiveness, the empathy, all that stuff was already there. I didn't expect that. So I think it really, kind of taught me this kind of level of understanding people in general, that it's, that you can't, expect people to react towards you, and that you can only react to them, like you can't change them. You can only change how you react to them. You can respect and understand that they're different. That wasn't something that maybe I had honed my skills towards. It's like any kind of relationship, like you're in a band, you're kind of doing a job and you're trying to work well together. I think I have much more of a better understanding, and am inspired more by the fact that like I can be really good friends to people that I might not be able to hang out with all the time, and find the good in certain things, and just sort of like leave a lot of buffer, and leave a lot of room to not have expectation, or to not try and manipulate a situation. It's just kind of like I have really, really great friends that I just don't get to see very often, and I don't hold any guilt or baggage over that. It's just like, man, if I see this guy once every 2 years, it's just as rad as if, I have certain friends that I see more than others that don't even live in LA. So it's like it's just given me an appreciation for the differences in people, to try and just sort of embrace what that is, rather than say, you know, if you're going to be my friend, it means XXX, or if you're going to, like to not to like let some of that preconceived idea of what it's like to be a dad, or to be a friend, or to be a husband, or to be a boss, and just sort of go, you know, I don't really care about titles or expectations or roles. I've lived long enough to know that roles change for reasons we can't even imagine, like you just change. Like, what are you going to do when something happens? You're just going to say, it can't happen. I can't change, because, it's like you have to roll with change and say like, okay, we're not going on that trip because something happened. What are you going to do? Like that's relatively, since my kids were born, that I've come to be able to accept that, embrace that, and kind of move forward with that idea, rather than being like, God damn it, we missed Disneyland or whatever it is. Like it's like, all right, like I've seen shit go down on the playground, and it would make any parent angry, where it's like you want to punish the kid, and it's just like I'm there going like, all right, time to go home. Just it's just, clearly you guys need to eat or whatever it is, but like there's no point in yelling or being angry. It's like, or what, I had an expectation of this was going to be a perfect day. Like shit happens. Kids fall off the slides or whatever, you know? So
Totally.
for that, I think I've evolved a little bit in that regard, based on, you know, them just kind of going, oh, okay. And then reflecting it back to my grandfather or my father, and just going like, you can't predict when the kid's got a mood or something happens or an emotional meltdown happens or whatever it is. It's like, and there's a reason for it. You just gotta own it, and just be cool with it.
I think
So
maybe.
I don't lose my,
Mm.
get frustrated or nearly as much as I used to. It was just like, God, I wanted this to be perfect. It's like,
I think
okay,
I'm a bit of a control freak, and maybe it has to do with my history and having kind of turmoil in growing up with my parents and whatnot. And so I like that you brought that up. I think, yeah, having kids has definitely educated me on and being that, like I gave you at the beginning of the chat, wanting to coming down to
yeah,
LA, flying in LA. I had it planned in my head. Okay, gonna pick up the car, go quickly to the thing, and then head. Yeah, like I could have been pissed off and mad that I didn't make it, but no, like what
of
is that
course,
going to do? Like,
of course.
right?
I've learned a little bit more on how to just kind of one foot in front of the other and kind of go, well, we're headed in a direction. And if it works out, cool. And if it's not, like, I can't force the ship to go where it wants to go, So I like kind of hinting at the idea of like, well, it's getting to be around dinner time. We should start to plan to eat. But if it turns into something chaotic, like, I'm just like I'm not trying to hold on to the control. I think I definitely have control things like you do because of the turmoil, but I'm learning how to focus it in other ways, or creative ways, or my OCD organizational ways. Like I can control other things to feel in control. I'm trying to not control people because I know what it's like to feel controlled. It's not a feeling that I want to. I don't want to be my father in that regard. I don't want to fear. Don't want them to fear me or regret a call or you know what I mean. I know
Yeah.
they don't want to let me down, and I'm sure they go to their mother and say, "Don't tell dad," but that's okay too. I'm okay with being like a little bit of fear in them that they don't want to disappoint me, but I have never blown my stack on those guys. Like it's just not going to happen. I'm not going to turn into that person no matter what happens. Just not.
Yeah, I don't have my dad passed away about 20, just over 20 years ago. He committed suicide and wasn't part of my life for a long time. Like my parents separated around when I was maybe 10 years old. So I don't have
So same.
a ton of memories
Yeah.
with my dad, but the ones that I do have when I was younger were him getting mad at me. And
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
I remember quite vividly, and it's just weird to me that I have that as a young childhood memory of me and my friends and my brother having a pillow fight in the basement, and we broke a feather pillow open and it got everywhere. And instead of me, if that was me as a father, I'd be laughing about it and maybe grab a pillow and start whacking.
Yeah.
But no, he grabbed
Yeah.
his belt and started whipping us. And like,
Yeah.
wow. Not saying that he was
I
like
know.
that all the time, but I do have good memories of my dad when
Of
he
course.
came back into my
Of
life.
course.
But yeah, it's just not
Those
worth it.
memories are those memories are a drag, it's and because I think it is just sort of a lack of it's a lapse in judgment. I don't think my dad was naturally that way, but he was pushed to get that way for whatever reasons, and I just don't think he ever quite embraced the joy that can happen from the idea of being of service to your kids, and it's not about what you get back, you know like I think there's something I've just learned to embrace the joy that I personally get from doing those things, regardless of whether I get thank yous and I love yous and all that stuff, because it that's not why I'm doing it, even though I know that that's either how they feel or how they will reflect on it looking back on it. I can't hold them to a transactional sort of relationship like that. So I feel sad for my father that he couldn't get to that point, but I definitely am at that point where I can be proud of being of service in that way and being that person in that way and teaching them and to be consistent and not judgmental and accepting. And, you know, I mean, there's obviously have limits, you know, it's like 2 a.m. scream, you know, like everybody's up partying and I'm like, "Dude, just cool out," you know, like I gotta go to bed, but no anger, you know, it's like just that kind of stuff is, it's just it's just a power trip, you know, it's just, it's not what I want. I don't want my kids to ever look at me in the same way that I looked at my father, even though there was lots of love there. There was mostly lots of pensive apprehension and a bit of fear of like, I don't know what person I'm going to get today. You know, is
Yeah.
it going to be happy, fun dad, or is this going to be aggro, you know, judgy dad? You know, you're going to criticize me. You know, it's like, it was always like nervous feelings, you know, and I don't ever want that with them. And I hope that that's how they feel. Like I can, you know, be goofy and understand. And but they know that I have like full OCD and that I'm like aggro about organization and cleaning and laundry and all that stuff. But I've just learned to deal with it. It's like, you know, like I'm never going to stop you from leaving your clothes on the ground. I just pick them up when I can, you know, like it's just, those lessons are not going to be learned. You know what I mean? They're different people.
Yep.
That's not something that I expected. I guess going back to my earlier point is I thought that that sort of stuff is learned, but it's really not. It's like hardwired, you know, uh, organizational functioning, higher level type. Like that's either in you or it's not. Like you're not, you know, certain people can walk right by you know, a spilled bottle of ketchup and not even see it, you know, and I can't change that. I can't be angry at them for not seeing it. Even though it drives me crazy, it's like you just have to kind of laugh and go, "Did you seriously not see that?" You know, it's just comical. Like I've learned to kind of just not hold on to that kind of stuff as some sort of inner voice turmoil. That shit'll just kill you.
Agree. I have a lot of experience in terms of behaviors of kids. I'm a high school teacher and have been for over
Oh my
20
God, that's amazing.
20 years. So when you talk about, you know, I'm very OCD too with certain things, and like my notes or
Yeah,
my worksheet that I make, my test, or like I
yeah,
have a lot of control over that, or my SNFU vinyl record
yeah,
collection, a
yeah,
lot of
yeah,
don't touch
yeah,
it. This is, you know,
yeah,
that
yeah,
thing. But yeah, you talk about like organizational stuff. You know, Johnny, grade 11, binder papers everywhere. No matter what I say or what I do, I'm not going to change him. He's been like
yeah,
that since elementary, for example.
yeah,
And you know, I'll be supportive and I'm not angry, or not that I
yeah.
would over that anyways, but yeah, it's I've seen all the extremes. It's been kind of a education for me in that sense, you know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
To see those sorts of things. So it's just interesting too, seeing my son grow up. He started junior high today, grade 7, and
Amazing.
I'm kind of curious now to what kind of student he's going to become, because there's that transition. Elementary, he's a good student, you know, and
Yeah, yeah,
you know, you try to give him some tips and to survive, so to speak. But like you said, ultimately he's kind of hardwired. He's very empathetic, a very kind individual, very social individual. Uh, you know, doesn't understand why people make fun of each other, and it just
yep. That's my son's the
in his
same way.
brain, he's just like, why would people say that to one another?
Yep,
Like in his
yep,
mind, he can't imagine ridiculing or making fun of someone. That's just not him.
yep, yep,
And then I'm like, where does he get that from? I don't really have those direct conversations like that, but
yep.
you know, I think I'm respectful and have lots of friends, and we're respectful to each other. So maybe you've seen that from modeling, but I don't know. I really
Yeah,
kind
I
of
think
believe
it's
it's kind
just
of
like
genetic.
again, I think it's that philosophy that at least for me, I think that they are just born who they are, and then they're part of the genetic brain function of the way they see things and the way they, you know, organize things that kind of makes a certain distinctions between things. And my kid is the same way. He can't understand it, and so, you know, oftentimes it's, I just try really hard to not like have it become a teaching moment where he's feeling like I'm telling him how to be, but just supporting, like, you're right. Like, it is hard, you know? Um, and then act, like, be as the best person I can be, because I also know that they're watching me. Regardless of my interaction with them, I know that when they see me interact with peers, friends, strangers, elderly people, like, everything I do and say, I know they're just watching me, even if it's not a like, hey kid, you watching me, like, they pick up on all that stuff. So I'm always very direct and very consistent in how I respectfully like shake people's hands and listen to them and things. It's always kind of like, I know I'm being watched. I know that they're maybe even like me learning what not to do and for themselves, like I'd like to say that I learned a lot from my father. I learned what I didn't want to do, whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. I have to look at it as a good thing. I loved him, looked up to him, but there was lots and lots of lessons to be had of saying, I'm not going to be that.
Mhm.
And
I
that's okay.
Yeah, I have those lessons too. Like everything I think I've done for the most part of my life was to be the exact opposite of my parents. My dad
Yep.
drank a lot. I tried to
Yep.
refrain from that.
Yep. Me
He
too.
wasn't educated, dropped out of school in grade 8, and I saw him not struggle per se, but he was a hard worker, and the jobs that he worked were just hard on his body
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
soul. It wasn't, I went to school, and that's also what kind of maybe gravitated me towards punk rock a little bit. Is I really looked up to people like Greg Graffin, who has a PhD. I really looked up
Yep.
to Jello Biafra because of just the intellect, I think, in the lyrics. And like that was
Sure.
the thing that was really appealing to me. Not really the exploited kind of idea. It's more that other, I don't know if you want to separate that other
I'm
punk,
in the
but
same, well, I'm in the
yeah.
same boat. Like, I was always, uh, I love that, like, you could listen to a band like Crucifix and know that, like, Sothera went on to become like a bank broker and things like that. Like, it was always an education and an artistic understanding. It wasn't just drink beers, get fucked up, and tear shit up. It was, I gravitated to that always, and saying like it's an elevation of consciousness, idea, thinking, embracing, and going forward and moving forward, and not just you know trying to destroy stuff.
Yeah, I wanted to
So I'm the
create,
same.
not destroy.
Me too.
Yeah. Did you have any
Always.
fears about being a dad?
No, actually thought I'd have more kids. Uh, two worked out. We tried for three. It was planned and almost happened, didn't work out. But I think, again, because I knew that I had the tools in the box to be better than my father, that it was gonna be okay. And I also knew that all they really wanted was, or needed, was just love and support and understanding and food and shelter and clothes, and like that, like some of my favorite people, you know super educated, went on to be amazing people, didn't have money. Like, none of that ever really concerned me. I've never really concerned myself too much with money, and I've always been able to make a great living doing things. I don't really, not preoccupied with that kind of stuff. So I knew that it was going to be cool regardless. Especially once I met my wife, then it was super easy, because I was like, oh, and you're like, this is gonna be rad parents, like two people, like she, like, it was definitely part of me that, like, when I met her, was like, oh, you'd be rad, mom. That's big points in me. You know what I mean? Like, I think about those things. So being a parent didn't freak me out at all. I think I was even more apprehensive to get married than I was to have kids at first, because my parents were divorced, and it didn't mean as much to me. But of course, we had a big wedding and it was fun. And then we
Yeah,
had kids.
yeah.
My wife and I were together for a long time before we had kids. So we were able to do lots of things together as a couple, traveling and shopping and just going out and seeing shows all the time. So when we did have kids, it was like a perfect time to be like, this is what we want to dedicate to. There is no competition here. If I'm gonna choose going to see a show over my kids, it's gonna be kids every time. Like I don't, it's to me, it was a no-brainer. It was very, very few times in my life where I thought, oh, I really want to go do this thing, but I can't. Like it didn't even enter my brain. It's like, when am I gonna, this kid thing goes too fast. Like it's a moment in time.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna miss any of it.
It does go fast. It's, it sounds so cliche, but I
It's
have
true.
a 9-month-old, and I'm just like in my brain the other day, I'm like, how is he 9 months already? Like,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I really cherished, really thought about that. As I was down in California, and like I said, I was staying at, my uncle lives in Santa Barbara, and he luckily he was actually at his cabin up in Canada, and so I got to run of his place for a week,
Nice, nice,
and
nice.
yeah, it was just the 5 of us, and we just hung out at the beach and just like soaked it in,
That's
man.
amazing. Yeah, that's
Soaked it in.
amazing.
Yeah. And
Being
then
in the moment, I learned a lot of that. Being in the moment and embracing what is right in front of you, regardless of what the perception of that is or what other cool things are out there, is stupid. Like it's just like I can't I can't it's like you just have to enjoy where you're at right in the moment doing what you're doing. Like there's this one moment in my life that I cherished, and it's a silly moment, but it's like it was my birthday. Uh the youngest had to have been only about a year old, and the oldest was maybe a year and a half, maybe two at most, something like that. And we were going out to dinner, and it was like, we're going to go out to dinner because you have two little kids, and you're like, you never really do that. And it was like, we're going to go out to dinner. And, the nanny's going to stay and watch the kids. And my oldest, I remember just walking out the stairs, like, we'll be back later. And my oldest just started melting down and was like, don't leave me. And I just said, okay, buddy. And I just picked him up and we took him with us. And he just held on to me so tight, and we took him to dinner, and of course we sat down at this beautiful restaurant, and he was on my lap, and he just fell asleep the instant that we sat down at the table. So I was like eating dinner the whole time with this baby, just and I was like, this is the best birthday ever. My back is killing me, like this is crazy, but I'll never forget that. And there's not a lot of birthdays that I remember like that, but it's just that idea of like, okay, this is what's up. Like I'm not gonna, I don't know. It just seems really easy for me to kind of take left turns now once they were born, to kind of just accept that you can't control life and that shit's gonna happen. Kids are gonna break bones and shit's gonna happen, and you just kind of have to roll with it. Like that's this, I'm not in control anymore. There's two other humans that are here amongst my wife and I. And I've kind of learned to love that, as much as it can trigger some of the OCD stuff. Like I love it. Like it's fine. Okay, let's roll. Like
yeah.
I'm good. I mean, I can't tell you how many times we've gone, an hour outside. Like my wife and I went to Coachella and drove all the way out there, and it was hot as hell. And we got out and we went inside, and 20 minutes later we looked at each other and we were just like, "This sucks. Let's go home." And we just leave. Like it's just like I'm not tripping. You don't need to suffer through this expectation of what something's going to be. It's like there's too many things in the world to throw you off your balance. And I think I've learned a lot since they were born on how to go with that balance and just kind of go say yes to things. It's like you don't know what's going to happen. Like go with your gut. It's always going to lead you in to a better place, regardless of what happened. Did I miss the show? Yeah, so what? Got to be with the kids, or I got to see that sunset, on the way home. Like I just learned to kind of trust that the universe is pushing me in a direction and that I can't control that at all, as much as I try.
Yeah, I got it. One more parent question, and then a few two other question more about just what you're doing.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
do you have any? What are the most rewarding aspects of being a dad?
Say that one more time.
What are the most rewarding aspects of being a dad?
Oh my God.
What are some few? Just as highlights.
I mean, it's all rewarding for me. I think the most rewarding thing for me is seeing them be good humans, and um and to not necessarily know that that had any influence on by me per se, but to just kind of go, okay, well, some combination of a lot of these things, whatever it is, whether I choose to, stay in the house that they were born in, until they go to college because I want consistency, or just, all those little things, and teaching them, like, to thank people in person or write letters to your relatives who sent you gifts, like all those little things. When I see it just being applied with them not knowing that I'm watching them, is super rewarding to me, because it's just a personal little joy that I can't really share with anyone other than my wife, of like, oh my God, did you just see that? Like, I don't even want to go up to them and go, hey man, that's awesome. Like I say, I'm proud of them all the time, but those little moments where you see a thing, or you see a revelation, or you hear them articulate, in a way that you just kind of go, man, you're you're cool. Like, I don't worry about you. And I don't know if I had influence on that or not, but hopefully some sort of little bits and pieces that I've kind of put into your life has at least allowed you to get to that place, whether you're learning it from me or not. And again, that comes back to my original philosophy of just, I don't know if I don't want to beat teaching into them, like, I don't want that, like, you're gonna take piano lessons because you're gonna be a great pianist. Like, I just am not a big proponent of that. If there's a piano there and you want me to teach you something, I will teach you something. If you don't care about it, I'm not, it's fine. Like, they're clearly, my oldest is a great artist, but he's a different brain. Like, the last thing I want to do is try and force something into his life that he doesn't want to do. So when I see that sort of stuff just develop and happen, and I see the way they interact in the world, I get super excited. But it's a selfish little weird personal thing. Like, I don't even really get to verbalize it much, and just go like, oh damn, bro, that's you're awesome. Like, I have faith in that, whatever you want to call that, like the cosmos, God, all that stuff. Where it's like, this is rad. Like, you're awesome.
Like that. So let's shift a bit. Like, tell us what's next for you. You got all of these things, as we started out the conversation of, of what all of these different things that you do, being the patron saint of punk rock, or this punk archivist. Do you have any projects kind of on the
There's always
horizon?
stuff on there's always stuff on the horizon.
It's your
I
chance
mean,
to
it's
kind of
like,
plug some stuff here. That's, I guess.
yeah. I mean, the Punk Rock Museum and the curator, creative director of that is an ongoing thing that I feel like I will always be a part of, and pushing to try and grow and develop, because it's just such an important thing. But it's like, outside of that, it's just, again, it's just a combination of, like, this sort of trying to maintain the DIY ethic and the knowledge to a new generation. I mean, the real joy I get is, like, seeing my 15-year-old playing in bands and watching what he's doing, and kind of, supporting that idea that, like, you're awesome. Don't listen to anybody. Do your thing. If you need help, I'm here. You can have my recording studio if you need it, but trust your gut. Like, there is no wrong here. Like, using the knowledge to try and benefit a generation of kids that might not understand the living your truth. I mean, I think that generation certainly understands it better than ours. Like, they are used to all different types of things that we were completely foreign to us. But but I think there's just like, I look forward to more about passing on information and telling stories and supporting a younger generation than any personal thing that I want to do. There's always going to be books and records and art shows and all that kind of stuff, but I'm finding a lot of joy in ushering in younger kids, you know, going and seeing 15-year-old bands and being like, you're awesome, just keep doing it. Don't listen to anybody, just keep doing it. You know, if you need my help, just ask. I mean, that's kind of it. I mean, there's always a million things going on. There's nothing that I really want to plug other than I like having an open door policy for people reaching out to me if they just want to know things or to talk things through. I think a lot of people get surprised that they can just call me and ask me a question, and I'm usually pretty open to like, well, yeah, let me tell you my experience. You know, you want to print your own book? I can tell you how. I can show you how. It's like I've done this for a lot of years. Like it's not easy, but I can glean this information from you. I can tell you, you know, the best way to do it in my experience. Or, you know, whatever. Like just being, you know, your own free self. I don't know. That's it. It's a hard thing for me because I do feel like I have a lot of plates spinning. I'm not really willing to let a lot of them drop to do other things, so I continually add things to the repertoire without letting other things go. And sometimes it's hard to keep them all spinning, but I just keep getting inspired. People ask me all the time, like, "Are you still inspired by music and art?" And I'm like, "Yeah, more than ever before." And I can honestly say that. Like, I am inspired more musically, artistically, you know, publishing wise, like, you know, thinking wise, philosophy wise, poetry wise, film wise, more than I ever was before. Not to say that there isn't great stuff that happened before, but it's like I'm continually overwhelmed with inspiration. So sometimes I have a hard time focusing my energy because it's like I'm a list maker
Mhm.
and I'm like constantly up all night and you know
Me too. I
trying
could
to
show
like
you a list
ignite.
here.
Yeah, it's bonkers. Like it's like there's too many things on my brain, so I always kind of hesitate to focus too hard on one thing because every day is different. I mean, probably why I enjoy, you know, like I have a music studio and a music production company, a liquor company, a book company, and I can kind of ebb and flow around like what my brain is feeling like at the time, or give attention to something that really needs it and let things kind of flow the way they need to flow when need be too. I don't want to crush things too hard. I have lots of great people working with me that support these things, so it's not about control. Sometimes it just needs a little bit of a spiritual leader to kind of step in and go, oh, no, no, let's shift this way. And you're good. Okay, cool. Do your thing. Like I said before, I like working with people. It's never about what I want necessarily. I think I have good intuition on things, but I don't have this preset determined idea of what I want to do. And every day is fucking different. I know that sounds crazy, but it's like sometimes I wake up and just go, you know, I want to focus on, I want to, you know, I want to open a coffee shop or I want to, you know, learn how to bake or like it's some days it's just like all I want to do is go do ceramics and that'll, you know, that's just what I need to do at the time. So I have this schizophrenic brain. So it's hard to pinpoint other than the idea is again, just I find more joy in music and art and philosophy than I ever did in just business, money and shit like that. So you know, going to see, you know, like the Keith Haring exhibit can inspire me onto a different stratosphere sometimes or whatever. Like it just spins me out. Like I can be inspired by a band or by an artist, a dead artist, a book. Like John Lurie just wrecked my brain all during COVID. I was watching his show and listening to his book on tape and just going like, just spinning into all these great creative modes. And that's what I love. So I kind of don't know. The universe is just going to kind of take me there, I guess. I have to trust in it.
Like it does. Are there any
Yeah.
words of wisdom you'd like to leave for dads or dads listening out there? So this is the last question.
I mean, my my only words of wisdom to anybody, even with my own kids, would just be to, from a dad point of view, is to not be afraid to be sensitive and emotional, and to be able to shift around from, like, certainly you're the dad and you're the protector and you're this whole predetermined sort of idea around that, but I think it's also important for kids to emotionally connect with their dads and have time where it's a safety place, even if you're not speaking. Like my oldest son and I, oftentimes I give him that time where it's just him and I, and we will just cruise around and like get food and go do a few things. And there's not a whole lot of communication happening, but it's like he knows, like, I'm here. I'm not trying to be like, suck it up, man. Like, it's just like when he's ready to have a delicate conversation, we will. And I think that's something that my dad struggled with, just sort of like not trying to be the dad. I think that being a dad can also kind of be like being the mom in that cliche point of view, or just a listener, or it's like, that's, I think, a lot of things that my friends who are dads struggle with sometimes, and I'm just like, man, I think that's important. You see your dad vulnerable and see him emotional and see that that's okay, and they get broken up about things. That's part of it. Like I try to just not hold that back. Again, just be myself, be truthful. This is how I'm feeling. I've really tried hard to get to a point to where I can say, I'm going to express to you how I feel, my brain and my heart, but it doesn't mean that I'm saying this about you. So I'm expressing myself. This is what's going on with me, so you understand, but I'm not suggesting this has anything to do with your doing. So we can relate to, this is, for some reason, this is where I'm feeling and I don't know why. So we can talk about it, versus this, I'm mad, and it's like, I'm not mad at you. It's like that can be confusing to a kid. They automatically just think it's about them. So communication, I guess that's really it. I mean, there's no bad communication. Like I don't know why people struggle with that. Like, why can't you just say how you're feeling? Because it doesn't mean you're judging somebody else. That people feel sad, people feel depressed, people feel mad for no reason. I know I do. Sometimes I just wake up mad. I was like, I don't even know why.
Yeah.
And that's okay to just sort of say, like, I don't know why I just woke up mad. And it's like, but to not make it that you're the victim or other people are to blame. And I think that's really important. Just that kind of open communication in a way that you can feel free to express yourself, even if you don't have the answers or you're not trying to be accusatory. And that like, communication in general is something that we always really strive hard in our family. It's not always that the kids want to communicate, but I'm always communicating to them as much as possible, or at least where I think it makes sense. And I know people struggle with that a lot. I mean, that seems to be like a huge part of what's happening in the world. It's all about just expressing communication, and without feeling that they're going to be judged, or accepting that they might be judged, but that's okay too. Like, you still have to do it. You still have to speak your truth.
I know.
I think that's probably one of the most important things to me. It's just that, there's no wrong feeling. Your feelings are your feelings. If you can express that, that's part of getting through that too, and having somebody hear it without necessarily taking on the burden of it. That's a big part of it. Like, speaking things out loud, I think, is important sometimes. It helps you almost manifest your own thoughts. The inner voice can be a crazy place.
Yeah.
I don't know. Did I just get too weird?
No, not at all. I could probably go on for another hour. We'll just end it there.